Look, I'll be honest here. I didn't expect to ever talk about this story. Most people online only hear these workplace horror tales from someone who's already walked away, already cooled off, already found the punchline. I'm not telling this from the finish line. I'm telling it from the part where my hands were still shaking from exhaustion, where I still believed loyalty could fix a broken system, where I thought working harder would eventually make someone notice the truth. My name's Mason Brooks, I'm 48, and I've been in engineering for 24 years. Before everything went sideways, I was the guy people called when they needed something done right. Senior engineering manager at CoreTech Engineering Solutions. The one who knew every regulation, every compliance standard, every risk the government client was about to discover before my boss even glanced at the project timeline. Here's the thing. I wasn't special. I just cared. And caring in the wrong environment, that becomes the heaviest weight you can carry. Our company wasn't huge, maybe 180 people, but the project I was managing was massive. Federal infrastructure modernization contract, $12 million budget, layers of compliance requirements stacked like geological sediment. We were understaffed, overcommitted, and permanently 2 months behind schedule. Every Friday ended with just one more critical fix. And every Monday began with a new list of promises my boss had made after 2 drinks and 0 technical understanding. Jordan Walsh liked to think of himself as a disruptor. You know the type. Paces around conference rooms talking about agile methodologies and digital transformation. The truth was simpler. He talked big, avoided accountability, and took credit for whatever he hadn't personally broken. He was 35, MBA from a decent school, and charismatic in the way a man can be charismatic right up until you need him to actually solve a technical problem. And then there was his niece, Brianna Walsh, 27 years old, brought in 6 months ago as junior systems analyst, loud, confident, always posting about work-life balance on LinkedIn while missing every deadline. She was the kind of colleague who'd greet everyone with enthusiasm but couldn't run a system diagnostic without creating 3 new problems. Jordan protected her, praised her, defended her, said things like, "She's got potential, she just needs guidance," meaning my guidance every time something caught fire behind her. I didn't hate the girl. Look, I hated the system that let her coast while the rest of us cleaned up the mess, and I hated that Jordan looked at me like I was the problem for not applauding loudly enough when she turned in work that would have gotten a contractor fired. For months, I carried that project on experience and stubbornness. Late nights, early mornings, endless calls with the government oversight team who, to their credit, stayed professional even when they were clearly losing patience. I learned to translate Jordan's buzzword promises into realistic technical timelines. I learned to smooth things over when Brianna missed another compliance milestone or deployed code that failed basic security protocols. I learned to swallow frustration because the alternative was letting a $12 million federal contract collapse, and I couldn't let that happen. Not yet. The day things started to shift, nothing dramatic happened. No shouting match, no meltdown, just a single moment that felt wrong. We had a progress review with the client, a big one, the kind where reports get scrutinized and budgets get questioned. Jordan was supposed to lead it. He showed up 10 minutes late, hair perfectly styled, talking about traffic but smelling faintly of whatever happy hour he'd been at the night before. "Let's keep this high level," he whispered to me as he sat down. Translation: cover for me while I pretend to know what's happening. I did. I walked the client through the compliance status, the security protocols, the integration timeline. I answered questions he should have been answering. I kept the room calm while he nodded along like a man listening to a presentation he'd never seen before. When the call ended, he clapped me on the shoulder. "Great work, Mason. You really shine when the pressure's on." And then to the team, "See, that's what experience looks like." He wasn't being ironic. He genuinely believed he'd contributed something valuable by showing up and staying quiet. Still, I told myself it wasn't worth getting worked up about. Everyone has off days, right? Everyone needs backup sometimes. I kept giving him the benefit of the doubt, long past the point where it cost me sleep. But later that week, something in me finally snapped. Not loudly, just a thin internal sound, like ice cracking under your feet. We were in the main conference room reviewing the sprint deliverables. Jordan leaned back, eyes half on his laptop, and said, "Some of these implementation approaches feel over-engineered. We need to stop getting lost in legacy thinking." He wasn't looking at me, but everyone else was. Legacy thinking. Like compliance documentation was optional. Like the security protocols I'd spent weeks getting approved were just bureaucratic nonsense. Like 24 years of knowing how government contracts actually work was somehow holding us back. I swallowed the comment, not because I agreed, but because pushing back in front of the team would only make things worse. I thought he'd talk to me privately later, maybe explain himself, maybe admit he'd been frustrated about something else. He didn't. He acted like nothing happened. For the next few days, I kept working, writing code, leading technical reviews, fixing issues no one else caught in time. On the surface, everything looked stable, but underneath I could feel something shifting. Not in him, but in me. And it wasn't anger, not yet. It was something quieter, something colder. By the end of that week, I realized I was holding the project together without any belief that things would improve. And that's when I understood the truth people don't talk about. Burnout isn't loud, it doesn't crash. It dissolves you slowly until the part of you that cared starts watching from a distance. That Friday, as I packed up my laptop, I caught my reflection in the dark window. Tired, stressed, and unsure when I'd last had dinner with my wife without checking email. I stood there thinking maybe, just maybe, the worst was already behind me. I had no idea what Jordan was about to say, or how quickly I'd walk across that line. Monday arrived with the kind of tension you can feel in the air conditioning. I told myself I'd get through the morning stand-up, review some code, survive the week. No confrontations, no drama, just work. But here's the thing about timing. It has a sense of humor. We were 15 minutes into stand-up when Brianna casually mentioned she couldn't complete the database migration because the documentation was unclear. I'd rewritten that documentation myself, step by step, with examples and troubleshooting guides. She hadn't read it. I knew she hadn't read it because the first step would have solved the problem she was describing. Before I could respond, Jordan exhaled sharply, like he'd been waiting for this exact moment. "This is what I mean," he said, pinching the bridge of his nose. "We're making things too complicated. Some people are getting lost in unnecessary detail." Again, not looking at me. Again, everyone else looking at me. I felt heat rise in my chest. Not embarrassment, insult, the quiet professional kind. "The migration failed because the last deployment skipped the backup protocol," I said, keeping my voice level. "I flagged it Friday. It's still not fixed." Jordan waved a hand, dismissing the words midair. "Let's not get defensive. We're all learning here." Brianna nodded seriously like she was the one teaching us something. Half the team studied their laptops, pretending to check notes. No one wanted the smoke. I didn't blame them. After stand-up, I caught Jordan privately. "Look," I said, keeping my tone careful. "I need clearer communication on technical decisions. The client's asking specific questions about compliance, and we need consistent answers." He didn't look up from his phone. "You worry too much, Mason. The client trusts us." "The client trusts results," I corrected. "And right now, we're behind on 3 critical deliverables." He finally looked at me, annoyed. "We're fine," he said. "You just need to adapt to how we do things now." That phrase stuck under my skin. How we do things now. Like 24 years of successfully delivering government projects was somehow outdated. Like knowing the difference between proper testing and hoping for the best was holding everyone back. But here's what really got me. That was just the beginning. By Wednesday, the client had escalated a chain of security vulnerabilities, all tied directly to shortcuts Brianna had taken in the authentication module. They weren't suggestions. They were federal compliance violations that could kill the entire contract. I wrote a detailed incident report, attached logs, included remediation steps. Standard procedure. Jordan skimmed the first paragraph, then turned to me. "Just patch it. You're the one who understands this legacy stuff anyway." "I understand it because it's my job," I said. "But this keeps happening because we're not following established protocols." He rolled his eyes. "You really love being the hero, don't you?" That was the moment I'd had enough. Not a dramatic snap, just a quiet internal shift. Like a door finally closing. Friday arrived already thick with unspoken tension. We had a client call that afternoon, a critical one, the kind that determines contract renewals and budget approvals. Brianna was supposed to present the security compliance status. Jordan hyped her up all morning. "She's got this," he kept saying. "Fresh perspective, new energy." She didn't have it. 5 minutes into the demo, her screen showed a cascade of red error messages that would have been obvious to anyone who'd actually tested the system. The client asked very calmly, "What exactly are we looking at here?" Brianna stammered something about environment issues. Jordan jumped in, laughing nervously. "We've been dealing with some resistance to our new approaches. Setbacks. Technical setbacks." "Resistance?" The client's voice sharpened. "Some team members prefer older methods," Jordan said, glancing at me. "It creates friction with innovation." My hands went cold. The client went silent in that specific way government officials do when they realize someone's lying to them and they're deciding how to respond. I spoke calmly. "The issues you're seeing are related to incomplete security implementation and untested deployments. I've documented all of this. I can share the technical details right now." Jordan's eyes widened, not with fear, but with anger that I hadn't just quietly absorbed the blame again. I shared the documentation, 20 pages, timestamps, code reviews, compliance checklists, everything presented without emotion, without accusation, just facts organized clearly enough that even someone who'd never written a line of code would understand what had gone wrong and why. The client reviewed it in real time. "This is very thorough, Mason. It helps us understand what's been happening on the technical side." That silence afterward wasn't awkward. It was revealing. After the call ended, Jordan closed his laptop, stood up, and announced to the room, "All right, tough week. We're going out tonight. Drinks on me. Brianna deserves some downtime after pushing through these challenges." He slapped her on the back like she'd just solved the hardest problem in computer science instead of nearly destroying a federal contract. Then he turned to me, smiling like a man who thought he still had authority. "And if you don't like how I run this project, you can leave." He didn't laugh. He didn't wink. He meant it. The room went quiet. Someone coughed. Someone else suddenly found their email extremely interesting. I didn't argue. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't say a word. I just watched him walk out with his favorite employee, both of them acting as if the project they'd just endangered wasn't still burning behind them. That night, something shifted for the final time. But here's the thing. While they were out celebrating nearly losing $12 million, I stayed in the office and did what I should have done months earlier. I opened a new document and began writing everything down. Not emotional commentary, just facts. Decisions, missed deadlines, compliance violations, every promise Jordan had made without understanding the technical requirements. By midnight, the office was empty except for me and the quiet hum of servers. I sent the complete technical assessment to my personal email, not to leak anything, not to escalate yet, but to make sure the truth existed somewhere outside his reach. Then I shut everything down and walked into the cold night air like a man stepping out of a building that had been slowly filling with smoke. Saturday morning, I woke up with that same strange calm. I made coffee, read the news, opened my laptop, and started reaching out to my network. Not frantically, not angrily, just methodically. The way you'd replace a part that finally wore out. Look, after 24 years in this business, you build relationships, people who know your work, who've seen you deliver when others couldn't. I'd helped enough engineers over the years, solved enough problems, built enough trust that when I reached out, people listened. By noon, a contact at Pinnacle Federal Solutions had called me back. By 3 p.m., we were on a video call. By 6 p.m., they were asking if I'd consider leading a project they were bidding on. A project that sounded very familiar. A project I knew they could win if they had someone who actually understood government compliance requirements. I didn't say yes immediately, but I didn't say no either. Monday arrived with tension you could measure with instruments. Jordan avoided eye contact the entire morning. Brianna sat unusually straight, typing with the intensity of someone trying to look productive rather than be productive. Then the email came in from the client. "We'd like a detailed technical briefing today. Please have Mason present the current status and remediation plan." Not Jordan, not his rising star, me. I didn't gloat. I just replied, "Happy to provide a complete technical overview," and got to work. Jordan hovered near my desk after lunch. "Listen," he said lightly, "let's keep today's call constructive. The client got spooked Friday, but we can get them back on track." I minimized the window I was working on and looked at him. "Sure," I said. "I'll stick to the technical facts." His smile faltered. Technical facts weren't his preferred language. The call started at 3 p.m. sharp. I walked the client through the real status, the actual risks, the compliance gaps, the timeline for proper remediation. Clean, direct, no sugarcoating, no corporate speak. When they asked about the security vulnerabilities, I explained exactly what had happened, who was responsible, and what it would take to fix it properly. 10 seconds of silence followed. 10 very loud seconds. "We appreciate the honesty, Mason," the client finally said. "This gives us a clear picture of where things stand." After the call, the client sent a follow-up email, but not to the whole team, just to me. "Would you be available to discuss the long-term technical direction for this project?" I stared at the screen. There it was, the line Jordan had told me to cross. I replied with one sentence. "Of course. I'm always available for technical discussions." When I came back from that private call, Jordan was pacing near the break room, arms folded like a father preparing to deliver a lecture. "What did they want?" he demanded. "Technical consultation," I said. "About what?" "The future of the project." His jaw tightened. "That goes through me. I'm the project manager." I nodded slowly. "Then maybe you should ask them why they called me instead." His face went red. "Are you trying to undermine me?" "No," I said calmly. "You told me to leave if I didn't like how you ran things. I'm exploring that option." For the first time since I'd known him, Jordan had nothing to say. That night, I finalized my offer with Pinnacle Federal Solutions. Not only were they offering me a senior technical leadership role, they were preparing a bid to take over our entire contract. The same contract Jordan claimed to manage. The same contract he'd been mishandling for months. All they needed was someone who could actually deliver it. Someone who understood government requirements. Someone the client already trusted. Someone who'd been doing the real work all along. Tuesday morning, I came in early, organized my project files, documented the handoff procedures, cleaned out my desk. Not dramatically, not emotionally, just professionally, the way you'd close out any other project. At 10 a.m., Jordan burst into the team room. "We need to talk about the client," he announced. "They're asking weird questions. Someone's been giving them mixed messages." Brianna looked at me like she expected me to confess to treason. "I've been giving them accurate technical information," I said simply. Jordan's face twisted. "You think you're some kind of savior? You think they actually want your version of reality?" "They want competence," I said, shutting my laptop. "And results, which we haven't been delivering." He stepped closer. "You're on thin ice, Mason." I stood up. "No," I said quietly. "I'm already off it." He didn't understand what that meant. Not yet. 2 hours later, the client sent an email to our executive team. Not to Jordan. "We'd like to discuss transitioning this project to a vendor with stronger technical leadership. Mason Brooks has been invaluable, and we'd prefer him to continue in an expanded role." Jordan read it, went pale, looked up at me like the room had tilted sideways. "What did you do?" he whispered. "I stopped covering for your mistakes," I said, "and I stopped pretending this was sustainable." Brianna swallowed hard, suddenly looking very young. "And now?" Jordan asked. "Now," I said quietly, "I leave, just like you suggested." He stepped back like I'd shoved him, but I wasn't finished. "You wanted to run things without accountability," I said. "Congratulations. You're about to find out what that actually looks like." For the first time since I'd known him, he had nothing to say. The HR meeting was held in a conference room that smelled like old coffee and industrial carpet. I handed over my resignation letter, clean and professional, and watched the HR manager's expression shift as she read it. "You're essential to this project," she said carefully. "Is there anything we can do to retain you?" "The client has already made their decision," I said, "and so have I." She didn't argue. She'd seen the email. Everyone had. By noon, executives were in emergency meetings. By 3 p.m., Jordan was called upstairs. By 5 p.m., I was already removing my access credentials. Jordan caught me by the elevator before I could leave. "Just talk to me," he said. His voice had lost all its corporate confidence. "We can work this out." I studied him, the man who'd dismissed my experience as legacy thinking, who'd blamed me for his failures, who'd partied while a $12 million contract hung in the balance. "You had months to work this out," I said. "Every time I tried to help, you made it about ego instead of results." "This contract is huge," he said desperately. "If they pull out—" "They're not pulling out," I interrupted. "They're transferring to a company that can actually deliver, a company that just hired me to lead it." His mouth fell open. Shock, fear, understanding, all in one slow collapse. You can't just... You told me to leave if I didn't like how you ran things, I reminded him. I followed your advice. The elevator opened behind me with a soft chime. I stepped inside. This isn't over, he called out. The doors slid shut before he could say anything else. My last week was peaceful. I documented everything for the transition, organized the technical specifications, labeled the architecture diagrams, not because they deserved it, but because that's how you close out a project properly. I don't sabotage. I don't need to. Reality handles that part. 2 other engineers approached me privately. Both were exhausted. Both were talented. Both had spent months being undermined by Jordan's management style. I didn't recruit them. Wouldn't have been ethical. But I answered their questions honestly. A week after I left, they both submitted their resignations. By the end of the month, Pinnacle Federal Solutions had won the contract transfer. The client insisted on it. They didn't yell. They didn't threaten. They simply pointed to the months of missed deadlines, the compliance failures, the technical debt, all the problems I'd been managing while Jordan took credit, and ended the relationship professionally. Cortec lost a $12 million contract. Jordan lost his fast-track promotion. Brianna suddenly didn't have anyone to cover for her mistakes. The engineering team scattered to companies that actually valued technical expertise over corporate theater. I heard through the network that upper management launched an internal review. Not because of me, but because losing a flagship government contract tends to make executives ask uncomfortable questions. It didn't take long for them to trace most of the problems back to decisions Jordan had made without understanding their technical implications. They reassigned him to a project management role with no technical oversight and no direct reports. A man who'd built his identity on being the disruptive leader suddenly had nothing to disrupt. Sometimes accountability is just someone being forced to live with the actual consequences of their choices. As for Brianna, she lasted another month before quitting to pursue influencer opportunities. She tried to connect with me on LinkedIn, probably hoping I'd endorse her for skills she'd never demonstrated. I declined the invitation. My new role has been everything the old one wasn't. The first week, my manager asked, "What do you need to do your best work?" No games, no tests, just a genuine question. The client treats me as a technical partner, not a problem solver for someone else's promises. For the first time in years, I close my laptop at 6 p.m. and don't feel guilty about it. I started mentoring junior engineers again, cooking dinner with my wife again, sleeping again. Peace isn't glamorous. It's quiet, predictable, earned. On a Friday evening, about 2 months after I left, I got a text from an unknown number. The project's falling apart. Jordan's blaming everyone else. Are you sure you made the right choice? I didn't reply, not because I was angry, but because the answer didn't belong in a text message. Of course it was the right choice. Look, some lines don't just end chapters, they start better stories. My old boss once told me, "If you don't like how I run this project, you can leave." He thought it was a power move. He thought it would shut me down. Here's what he didn't understand. It freed me. And cost him everything. The thing about loyalty is this. When you give it to the wrong people, it becomes a trap. When you finally take it back and give it to yourself, that's when real change happens. That's when you stop being someone else's safety net and start building your own foundation. 24 years in this business taught me a lot about systems and code and compliance. But the most important lesson came at the end. Sometimes the best solution is the simplest one. When something's broken beyond repair, you don't keep patching it, you build something better. That's exactly what I did.